Hola, muy buenos días a todas, todos y todes. Hoy día estamos aquí para compartir con National Film Board de Canadá y conversar sobre realidad extendida. Tenemos a un panelista de lujo, ya lo voy a presentar. Antes de todo quiero contarles que estamos con traducción simultánea. Tienen que apretar el mundito o donde dice es, y ahí podrán elegir español para escuchar toda la conferencia en español. Además les cuento que tenemos traducción en lengua de señas y saludo a nuestras intérpretes en lengua de señas chilena, Camila y María Alicia, así como agradecer a Felipe en la traducción simultánea. Recuerden que pueden dejar sus preguntas y comentarios en el chat del el webinar o bien en el chat de YouTube o de Facebook. Esperamos una gran participación, ya que nuestro invitado está listo y dispuesto para responder todas sus preguntas. La National Film Board de Canadá es una organización pública cuya misión es producir y distribuir películas canadienses y promoverlas en el mundo. Trabaja en colaboración con cineastas y creadores tanto emergentes como consolidados, coproductores de todas las regiones de Canadá y socios de todo el mundo. Los contenidos desarrollados por la National Film Board, ya ustedes lo sabrán, son conocidos por sus documentales, animaciones, pero también por sus obras interactivas de vanguardia, incluyendo proyectos de realidad virtual, contenidos para móviles, experiencias inmersivas y participativas. Esa es la idea de conversar hoy día justamente sobre ese tipo de contenidos. Y para conversar sobre esto tenemos un invitado de lujo, como ya les decía, que nos va a ofrecer una masterclass. Él se llama Louis Richard Tremblay, es productor ejecutivo del estudio interactivo del programa francés desde 2019. Ingresó a la National Film Board de Canadá como productor el 2013, proveniente del Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Louis Richard se ha enfocado en el poder de las experiencias interactivas, es una especialista en experiencias interactivas y realidad extendida, y los medios de comunicación, liderando numerosas coproducciones internacionales en el National Film Board de Canadá y ayudando a producir docenas de obras premiadas tanto en Canadá como internacionalmente. Como les contaba, en esta clase magistral, Louis Richard nos hablará sobre qué se entiende por realidad extendida, sus principales herramientas, su proceso productivo y de comercialización, qué espacios existen en el mercado para su difusión y exhibición. Todo esto mediante estudios de caso. Él va a compartir con nosotros un lindo PowerPoint y coproducciones de realidad extendida desarrolladas por National Film Board de Canadá en el último tiempo. Así que sin más, démosle la bienvenida a Louis Richard. Hi Louis.
Hola.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I hope everyone is good too.
You. Yeah. Hope so too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being here and sharing with us your time and your knowledge.
My pleasure. So I can just start sharing and take the screen?
Of course.
Yes.
Let's start.
Okay. Let's go. So
I'm
hello
gonna
everyone.
turn off my camera, but I'll be here looking for the questions and commentaries.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm just gonna start sharing. Okay, I lost you all. Yeah, this is what I want. I'm just gonna make sure we have the sound on. Yes, perfect. Okay, so hello everyone. So today, I'm gonna spare the presentations. Thank you, Paula. You said everything. So I'm interactive producer at the French interactive studio. I am based in Montreal, where I am today. There's 2 studios at the National Film Board of Canada who produce interactive work as their sole production. The other one is located in Vancouver. We're 2 of 10 studios spread out through the country, mostly geographically, so acting in all different provinces. Both interactive studio have a national mandate, and we're always, as it was said, looking out to broadcast and to share the experience we produce in Canada to the rest of the world. So this is very much why I'm very glad to be with you today. We've also done a number of international co-production, and always looking for the next opportunity. Also, one of the reasons why I'm with you today. So I'm gonna start the presentation now, basically trying to explain how we work, so the process of how we create. But before going into that, on the how we create, the interactive studio is really a production studio. We're not hosting creative within the studio. There's 10 people in our studio, mostly producers, delegate producers, coordinators, technical directors, and technical coordinators. So every now and then, we may work over a year with more than 50 creators of different horizons. They come from different fields of perspective, exactly. And we try to nurture and to create the right context for their creation to exist and to reach their public. So for today, what I'm going to talk mostly is about experimentation. This is at the very base of pretty much everything we do in the interactive studio. We've never done twice the same format or use twice the same media in the same matter. So our DNA is really based on trying to find ways grounded in the medium we select to tell a story and to create a rich experience for the people within the experience. I'm going to call them all like users, visitors, interactors during the presentation. It all means basically the same thing: someone facing a screen or within an installation, trying to figure out what is the experience that person can live with what we've created. The NFB stems from a long tradition of experimentation. It was created in 1939. Like, of course, the first goal was really to try to enroll Canadians into the Second World War. But as early as 1941, John Grierson, who was the founder of the NFB, brought in Norman McLaren, that is still known today as a pioneer, very avant-gardist creators that we connect to every day in the way we figure and we think of creation. So it's really about, you want to tell a story, you want to create a vivid experience for someone, no matter the subject, there's technologies at hand, and you just explore with those technology to see, are you going to be able to create a different look on the story that may have been told each number of time through books, cinema, theater, and our question is really, okay, how do we tell that in the age we live in? So with VR, AR, artificial intelligence, the web, of course, and every technology that is at hand, and how to detour those technology to the service of creation and of storytelling. This is really still the spirit in which we work at both Interactive Studio at the NFB. So this is a good example of that. This is Les Voisins in 1952, pioneering motion capture film. We also relate to Pierre Perrault, direct cinema founder here at L'Île aux Coudres, at the time where cameras were beginning to be so small that they would just go out on the field and record everyday life in a whole new matter. This group of maybe 10 people around like late 50s, 60s, 70s really are still inspiring for us. Just they were the first to synchronize sound to moving image out of an error. Basically, the sound man on the film that's called Les Raquetteurs decided, without telling the director, to just go on the field and record live, and they synchronized it to the image afterwards. So this notion of just trying it and see what comes out, even if it's perceived at first as a mistake, is really still the spirit in which we live in. We also are very, for the very beginning, this is 1967 World Fair in Montreal. Colin Lowe, this guy here in the white shirt, and sorry, I forgot the name of the other one, but Colin Lowe was really a pioneer. So they ventured into creating a pavilion, an NFB pavilion for the 1967 Expo, playing with multiple screens. This is an example of what they were trying to achieve. Just gonna let it run just so we get an idea. So if you can imagine those images, they ran for a long time. Of course, this is a small extract, but within the building you see here, there were like many large screens, and they had to figure out, how do you tell a stories on numerous screens within a space where people can move in and create a unique experience. This is, again, something we do all the time, like striving from this knowledge still within the NFB, or at least just as a spirit, to influence the project we put forward. This is a recent example for the 50 year. So this is 2017 in the Place des Festivals in the heart of Montreal, where we reproduce with the same image, a similar experience, but on buildings with projection mapping within as a commemorative of the 50 year of the project. Also, this is 1972, Peter Folda's first computer animation movie, made on a very large computer based in Ottawa. So this is something we do have still have access to, because we're a Canadian agency and we work for the government in a way, even if we're much independent on the work we produce. This is still a characteristic of the NFB today. Like, we were able to work with the ministry, ministry sometimes, and different bodies of government to push project forward. This is also, if you see here, maybe you've heard of him, it's Denis Villeneuve, who recently released Dunes. Much of the young Quebec cinematographer and Canadian cinematographer have one relation or another with the NFB, and we hope it's still the same today, but we always give an open door to newcomers and really try to create the passage of knowledge and of vision through the generation. Lastly, for really big screen, this is the first IMAX movie that was created. The title is Momentum. It was presented at the Venice Biennale in 1992 by Colin Lowe, the same guy you saw on the picture in 1967. So it's really always, whether it's a film, whether it's, no matter the format or the medium, but it's really going back to the impression you're able to create depending on the scale of the interface you're going to be working with. This is, now I'm moving into recent work. So those were like, the last one was 1992. So the next work, I'm going to really go into immersion and the type of work we do today in the studio. I'm just going to do a check-in with you. Is everything right? Images are okay. Sound is there. Is everything cool? I have no feedback, so for me it's a tough thing to always a tough thing. So if you can give me a sign that everything is okay. Yeah. I guess so. Okay, I'm just gonna move on then. So this work, I'm gonna open up the chat to see if, okay, perfect. Just gonna put this somewhere on my screen so I can follow you. If you have any question, you can pop them in the chat and I'll see them. So this is a work we created in 2018. It's called, it's for the entrance of the Arctic Gallery at the Museum of Nature, Canadian Museum of Nature in Ottawa. It's basically projection on ice surfaces. And to me, this is a good example of how we create. At the beginning, our initial mandate working with the Nature Museum was really to create the introduction piece of the Arctic Gallery to open up. So we gathered a number of creators with different fields of expertise. Montreal is a city where there's like projection mapping is really mature at a mature stage. We have people like Moment Factory in our ecosystem, and one of the member of the team was have been working with Moment Factory at a number of times, and we also brought up different people from sound, imagery, moving imagery, animation in a workshop where we just state that, okay, we have to create a very engaging experience that holds the very sense of what you're going to see if you go into the Arctic Gallery. So we figured out, I would say, how to have permanent ice in a closed space inside a building. So what you see on the screen is real ice. If you touch it, it's really cold. You can like signature with your hand. If you leave your hand long enough, people had much fun. Well, you can see on the left of your screen someone touching the ice. So the immersion was total. It was about Arctic, and we figured out a way to bring ice inside, and had to work with the Science Museum to do so. So when we work with creator, this is always what we're trying to achieve, is how is the work you're going to create is going to embody what you want to tell as a story. So it's not only telling the story, but creating a work where just by itself, you're saying something. Just by the technologies you use, you're saying something. Next. This is another work. We've worked with, it's a small studio. It's a group called ATOA. Maybe some of you know Vincent Morisset. He's been the last work we did with him. A part of it was in the Atacama Desert, north of Chile. He went there and he told the story. This is one of his early work, which is called Blah Blah, which is basically a computer film on our lack of communication or communication issue. This is the in situ version of it in the Art of Montreal, where people on an iPad right here on the block you see, the light block, can interact with the interface of projection. But if you would be in front of your computer, you would have basically the exact same experience with the interface, except that you're not in a great surrounding like this. So this is also very core to what we do. Like over the years, we've produced like more than 100 work. If you add up the déclinaison, like the other adaptation of the same work, it almost rises up to 160. So often projects we do exist in more than a medium, in more than a setting. This is another project we did in 2013. It's called Mégaphone. It was again by Moment Factory and 𝐄𝐬𝐭𝐤𝐿, and it was in the midst of the municipal election in 2013 in Montreal. We wanted to create a speaker's corner. And we started working with those people, and we ended up with like a projection facade piece where you could talk and express what you vision on the future of the city was. And through an algorithmic, like early AI, algorithmic machine, we would extract the keywords and really highlight them. And even if it was not on, the words were still shown on the facade during the night. So this is a more complicated project, I would say, just because of the scale of it. But this is very much close to what we like to do. It's really try, okay, what would a speaker's corner be in the Art of Montreal in 2013 with the technologies at hand? Could we augment the experience of a speaker's corner? And this is what we kind of came out with. So this is often a question we ask ourselves when we work with people is, okay, you want to tell this story, or you want to talk about this subject, or you want to make live this kind of experience. How can technology upgrade what you want to bring to the public? This is another project by Vincent Morisset. We've worked with them a number of times. This is really the unit. You see the words. They're basically 4 people doing everything on that, really much in the spirit of those pioneers I was talking about at the very beginning. So trying to figure out ways to tell a story. In this case, what Vincent wanted to create as an experience is really to have us reflect on our difficulty to take time, to pause. And they created a walk into the woods in 3D. I'm just going to give you a glimpse of what it looks like. So basically, it's just an experience where you wander around. You're that persona. I don't know if you've noticed, there was also like a Black persona. This is, to me, really the way in which we work. So we needed to film. This is real, a 360 camera in the woods, capturing real images. And we wanted to create like kind of a video game, kind of third person, first person experience. And I don't know if you've noticed at the very beginning, but it was really that little phrase in the ground of the screen, where there's no point, there's no gaming, you just wander around and you have to figure out. And at some point you understand that you can fly, you can do much things, and the environment changes over time. And it's a really beautiful and simple experience. And you've heard the music a little, and some people do get it, but at some point you understand that basically the reason why we use the keyboard to navigate, it's because it's a music machine. Every music is dynamic and reacts to the motion of the persona, and you can basically create your own melodies, but we don't say it. We let people figure it out, moving through the experience. This is something we always aim for. It's like to try to create works that are intuitive in the way they can be navigated. So that's a great example of it. Just this is more like if a different scale of project, but it's a project we released recently with basically the same group, but led by Caroline Robert, who's the animator of the work you just see previously. But this is her own personal project, and basically you're massaging a brain of a young girl, and she's just moving through your, moving you to her brain stream. This is the English title of it. It's online. If you look for it, you can see it's basically an animation movie that you can interact with. And this is at the different scales, the type of work we like to do. So it's not always like big work. Sometimes it's really smaller work, but we're always trying to find how is the interaction gonna create meaning into the story you want to tell. So I invite you to just explore it at some other time. It's like 5 to 18-minute experience, depending on how you will play with it. So this moves me into the type of work we do, the mediums we work with. So we work with all sorts of medium: mobile, web, installation, VR, AR, XR. We never, at the beginning at least of a project, put too much focus on the format or the output in which the story and the experience will be lived by the visitors. We like calling ourselves agnostic, and I'm just gonna tell you a little what we mean by that. So when we go into a project, I can share at the end of the workshop how I can share the document we use, and we share with different creators at different points how to move from an idea to an interactive project. 2 times we've developed a couple of methodologies. Some of them are into that document I will be able to share. And it's really based on our agnostic character. So at the beginning, we're really asking ourselves key questions. So we never go into a project and say, I want to do a VR experience. We go into a project asking ourselves, what is the story I want to tell? How important is it? How is it for me to tell that story? What will the experience of that story be like, since we're an interactive studio? And then we move on from there in different stage. This implies working in a prototype or iterative manner. So usually we segment projects in like 4 big categories, where you have investigate. This is the core work where we're trying to work with creators and really focus on those questions I just mentioned, like, so what is the story? How do you want to live the story? And in which format could it be told or experienced? And how is that format going to upgrade the experience of a story or bring a unique perspective on a story that has been told a number of times? The reason we do that, or we feel it's the right thing to do, is really because we live in a time where well, you can transport people pretty much anywhere. This is, of course, the obvious immersive device called the Oculus Rift. But those goggles who put the screen right in front of your 2 eyes and really closes you down vision-wise and audio-wise, allows you to transport people many places. So you can basically teleport them in a way. This is an image from a project I'm going to talk deeper about in a couple of minutes. It's an enemy project we did with 𝐄𝐬𝐭𝐤𝐿. And basically those people are whether in Salvador, in Congo, or in Israel or in Palestine, in face of a combatant. So I'm going to go deeper into it, but it's just to say that we take very good care when we go into a project to ask ourselves, when we teleport people in a specific place, what is the entrance? How is the experience designed so people come at it with a little knowledge of where they're going to go? I always like to say, people know how to go to a movie. They know they have to get on a bus, buy a ticket, go into a room, take a seat, sit, and wait for the movie to start. But in new media, this ritual, in a way, doesn't exist most of the time. Now we can definitely say people know how to log in onto the internet, log in a URL in the browser they're using, and end up somewhere. But what is that somewhere? It's often not known. So we always take a good attention to not only think about the work, but how people are coming into the work, because of what you have to let go. You have to you cannot assume that people know exactly how to reach your experience, and most of the time, since we're trying to explore, you have to be very kind to the user or the visitor and really create an experience where they are reeled in slowly into the experience. Or else what we figure out over time is that if you don't have that attention for the visitors, well, they just opt out, because on internet it's really easy to do, and on interactive like games and stuff like that, it's really easy to shut it down if you don't understand what's asked of you as a visitor. Okay, so now I don't see any questions so far, so I'm just gonna jump in a little deeper in 3 examples. Basically, this is le photographe inconnu, the unknown photographer. I'm gonna talk after that about the enemy. We just seen an image of it, and I'm gonna end with a project that is ongoing now, which is Chomsky versus Chomsky. So on those projects, if you want to pop a question on the chat at any time, now we're really going into a place where I'm gonna, by using project, go a little deeper on the way we work. So the unknown photographer. The story of this project stems from a photograph. Bertrand Carrière, sorry, who got his hand on an old First World War book, a little by accident. And he got fascinated by the stories of those photos. He was asking himself, who was that person taking those photos? Where were those photos taken? And what are they telling us about war in our time, looking back at the First World War? But what he had in his hand was basically 300 or more photos with each their stories. And he wanted to create an interactive piece. So we work with a group called Turbulent, based in Montreal, where we decided to go for, like, how would a vivid story of old photography be told in 2000. This was in 2014 that we started this project. We released it in 2016. So this was the question. So at the beginning, we were thinking of an iPad experience where we would camp the storytelling, letting the visitors move through those photos and through a narration, and really explore them and trying to reveal the stories and the effect they may have had at that time. I think we spent almost 2 years to come to that image I'm showing to you. It was very difficult. The creative team were often discouraged for many different reasons, because as you can see, like, they're old photos with like often not of very good quality, and the team was really puzzled by the story they needed to tell with that. How could we give it meaning? And so at one point, we ended up to this interface, an iPad interface. I think it was the 5th prototype that we built. And when we build a prototype, we keep it very small to make sure that we don't take too much risk. We like taking risk, but we validate the key ideas of creation before actually building a full project. So at that stage, nothing was working. The creative team was pretty discouraged. But this prototype was built in Unity, and we're in 2016, where Unity was a core tool for emerging VR experiences. So because we were discouraged, we just asked the creators, like, can you just adapt this and shoot it in a VR goggle? And this made the history of the project. So because we were allowed to use those photos in an environment bigger than nature, we were able to give them a profondeur, a deepness that we weren't able to give using a small screen. So the VR allowed us to really blow up the images, make them bigger than nature, and create an experience where we would be in a memory of that unknown photograph at the end of his life, looking through those old photos, trying to make sense of those old photos, but having lost most of his memory about First World War. We always work, almost always work with scholars and experts of different fields that we bring to the creative unit to inform their creation. In that case, we work with historian, and we had identified exactly what we were looking for. So it was a fictional reality, of course, but we wanted to be as authentic as possible as a war memory. of a soldier, but not of just a First World soldier. So we had researcher look into people who go at war. How do they experience their life afterwards, and how is their memory affected by that? And this became the narrative string of this project. So you're really moving into like a dreamy places where those photos have scales that aren't possible to replicate in in real life, or unless you have like very infinite resources. I'm just going to give you a quick idea of how it looks like into the goggles.
I remember the war, but my memories are distorted. My thoughts, a deafening cacophony. These memories, are they mine?
So this is a good example of the project. Sorry for that. Okay. Okay, so this brings me back to this guy. So it was really when working on this unknown photographer project at the very beginning. Like I said, we had much difficulty. Turbulent is a group, like it's a big creative enterprise studio based in Montreal, and they were trying to go at this project in the same kind of pipeline you would do a movie or a big project, an internet project. And because we weren't able to create that, when we put it at the end of the prototype I was talking about in the goggles, we also did one thing. We recommended them to create a special unit of 4 different expertise, really complementary to one another, and try to figure out what the project could be given this new element of virtual reality. And this is what happened, and they came out with that. And the reason I'm bringing back 𝐏𝐬𝐭𝐢𝐜𝐴 was really because, again, of the experimentation. When you go into an interactive project, there is a time where you need not too much people just to figure out, and people with the right sets of expertise to really go to that limit. If you remember at the very beginning of the presentation, I was talking about detouring. So to be able to detour something, you have to master it in a way and understand its limitation and try to work within the limitation to use it in a different way. So this is really at the essence of pretty much every project we go in, creating that unit that will be able to find those points of detouring existing technology, because we're not in the business of inventing new technologies. We're really in the business of detouring what's at hand to create that vivid story and that unique experience. So this is really where we connect to McLaren, where he was drawing on pelliculas in 1945 and stuff like that, and really trying to work into the flaws of the technologies at end to create something unique. No question yet. Like I'm going at the right pace. Like everything is cool. Okay. So this next project is a very ambitious project that we started pretty much in the same time we started the previous one, the unknown photograph, but with a different angle on it, but also with the photograph. So 𝐏𝐚𝐫 is a war photographer. His photos have been exposed in the New York Times, like he had a good career as a war photographer. But he reached the limit at some point where he asked himself, okay, I'm taking photos of those people. They're entrusting me with their stories, but I haven't changed much after almost 20 years of practice in the field. What if virtual reality would create a different experience for the visitors and create maybe a new field of hope? I think he was expecting to change things. So this is often a motivation for documentarists and journalists and people we work with. We want to make a difference. So this was definitely a driver for 𝐏𝐬𝐭𝐞. You see him in Congo, where they went into the field with the VR output. At this time, we already decided this was going to be a VR experience. But they went into the field to capture the different soldiers. So the story is basically there's 3 conflicts, 2 combatants of those 3 conflicts. I've named them earlier on. So it was Israeli-Palestine, the Congolian wars between factions and the Congo Republic Army, and in Salvador, the stories between the Maras and the different groups fighting each other within a city setting. So what 𝐏𝐬𝐿 did is really, okay, I used to photograph those people to bring their story to the public. Now I want to capture them as a whole, and really that's what he did in those 3 different countries or places, really working pretty much in the classical way of identifying who the protagonist would be, working with the protagonist and convincing him to accept, to play that game of talking to his enemy and opening up to his enemy. One thing important, in the virtual realities, they are facing each other. In real life, they never faced each other. So this is really where 𝐏𝐬𝐿 work was he wanted us to be in that place where he stands between 2 different factions when he's covering international conflict. But he decided to use it, to go at it with tools of his time. So he used 5 cameras, kinetic cameras, and we recreated the combatants after that with CGI, like computer-generated images, but really as authentic as it can be doing so. So this is really the stem of this project. And so this is an example of the white image, black and white image is Dieudonné, and this is the reproduction of Dieudonné in the VR settings, as close as it can be. And people were going in the experience facing those people face to face, basically, and they would talk to each other through the guidance of 𝐏𝐬𝐿's voice himself. So it's going to give you an example.
This task sometimes included killing prisoners on their return from operation. Jean de Dieu and his unit lived a parallel existence, surviving only through looting villages, attacking gold mines, diamond mines, or coltan mines. From a very young age, Jean de Dieu has been a victim of circumstances. From victim, he rapidly became a perpetrator, and like thousands of other young men, knows nothing but violence, sustaining a cycle that has been drenching the East Congo in blood for several generations.
So when you move to those 3 rooms, you're really asked to go towards one or the other. And they answer to different questions, all the same questions that were asked by 𝐏𝐬𝐿.
What is your name? How old are you? What is your rank in your arm group?
Jina langu Pasia Kaboy, My name is 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐭𝐢𝐜𝐚. I'm a soldier and I hold the rank of sergeant. I entered the Congolese government army in 2002, and I'm now 30 years old. DC and the FDLR. They're the ones who came to threaten me in Congo. They threaten the FDLR is my enemy because it does not work for the Congo.
So this gives you an idea of how it looks like within. So they each take their turns answering the question, and as you move around, totally to your own decision, moving around, you can decide to listen to one or the other for 5 minutes, then 10 minutes the other, come back. You do pretty much whatever you want. And at the very end, after you've passed through the 3 rooms, you're presented in the 4th room to the person that the system recognizes you as being less sympathetic to. So it puts you in front of one of the protagonists and really challenges you and like, okay, why did I behave like that towards him or and not towards the other? So this is really the experience that 𝐏𝐚 wanted to create. Okay, so I'm like, if there's no question yet, or questions can come afterwards, but I showed you those 2 projects really to show you 2 different scales of project. In the unknown photographer, it's a solo experience, pretty much like you would look at the movie at your place. It's really you're alone and you're listening to it. So at the end of it, when you take off the goggle, you're left to yourself. With the enemy, it's a multi-user experience. So we were able to put at the same time anywhere from 5 to 20 people moving around a space, moving through those different rooms I told you about. But at the end, coming together as a group. And this is a challenge we still have. It's like, since it's interactive by design, how can you create also experiences that are going to be interactive at the end? Inspired a lot by how you get out of a cinema room, where when you go see a movie, you're by yourself with the movie, but afterwards there is a space where you can exchange. And this is really something we're trying to achieve more and more. And Enemy was a great example of that, where you would have like 20 people. And in the same way, as I told earlier, that we design from the moment people arrive in a space to experience the work, we also more and more design the exit of the experience. So once you've transported them in 3 different conflict zones, facing 6 people like that, and putting them in front of one of those 6 people and challenging you and asking yourself your question, there needs to be a ventilation space afterwards for people to chat and to exchange and to question themselves about the experience they just lived. So for us, this is when designing an experience, this is how we design. We just not just designing the center of it, but the entrance and the exit of it. Pretty much because of what we told before, is that you have to be nurturing to the public who go in. And it's a tough thing to do. It's really tough question to ask yourself. Sometimes we're pretty proud of what we achieve. Other times we're just like, okay, that was good enough. But it's really something we strive for all the time. And I think when you're designing interactive experience, creators should always be conscious about those challenges when you bring something to people. Okay, I'm going to go to the end of the presentation. So this is the last project I'm going to talk about today. It's a project, the title is Chomsky versus Chomsky. It's a conversation experience reflecting on the pitfalls and the promises of artificial intelligence in our time. And what we've decided to do with this is really use a vast archive of Professor Noam Chomsky to create an entity, an AI entity, that is brought into our world, asking himself all sorts of questions, answering a question from the public, and just engaging in a conversation of what are we trying to reproduce when we call artificial intelligence. What is it we're trying to reproduce, since we don't know much about human intelligence? It is also an experience where Sandra Rodriguez, the lead creator, wanted us to live the tension between the limitation of AI and the beauty of human intelligence, all based on Noam Chomsky's thinking, where basically he says what difference does it make? What is the difference between AI and human intelligence? Which is basically, humans are really prone to collaborate. Humans have an endless imagination and have an endless inquiry reflex when facing the unknown. While artificial intelligence is just something in our time that we feed with data, and with all those data can predict some sort of future. And then this is where we look back, is like, what do you want to know about your future? So this is really the experience, and it's a multiplayer experience where you have to learn to collaborate, to be curious, and to inquiry the machine in the right way for it to really bring you to a level. So this at this time it's a VR experience again, but it's going to be an installation where you would have small games to play before interacting. So in the VR goggles, what you've just seen before is right here in the middle on a physical monolith, I would call it, and create really a conversation between 5 people and the Chomsky AI entity. I'm just going to give you an idea of what it looks like.
I have been asked questions all my life. Everybody wants to know. Defining intelligence is a colossal problem, way beyond the limits of our understanding. We have to be humble. We really are in a pre-Galilean stage. We don't know what we are looking for any more than Galileo did. There is an instinct for freedom at the core of human nature, to inquire, to create. You are the countless number of people, the driving force in history. It is up to you to decide. You can duplicate me. But the question is myself actually myself?
So this is the experience we're working on right now, and it's really interesting in a way where we're at the stage in the studio after producing interactive words for almost 12 years, where we can push our limits and really bring to a project different skills and resources way beyond what we could have imagined 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. I would say learning to collaborate with a learning entity, the AI, the Chomsky AI machine, So building such a project was even more important to do the exercise I told you about very early on. So really be focused on what is it you want to tell, because when we venture into a complex project, costs are affected, of course, time, but also a sense of being lost into the creation. So for us, this is a very good example of how you have to be very strong before you go into an adventure on what is the story, what is the experience, and how is it going to be engaging for the visitors that you will welcome into the experience. Will they understand the story? Will they understand what they need to do to have access to the story you want to tell? So this is really at the very core of everything we do. Whatever the means, whatever the resources, or whatever the technology, experience has told us that if you have that very strong assays or like ground at the beginning before opening up the adventure, it's really the key to ending up with a great project, no matter the scale of the project and no matter the resources you bring to this project, is really to be solid on that, because if you don't do that, it's very easy to get lost and then spend a lot of money and lost time in a way, and be frustrated in many ways creatively. I mean, because nowadays you can do pretty much anything, but it's really even more important to be focused on what you want to tell as a story, because of all of that. So I'm gonna end on those notes and take questions or open up conversation if you wanna. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen.
Hi, Louis.
Hello.
Thank you very much for this exposition. It was really interesting and really new for us. Yeah, so we're very glad and happy and thankful because you're today with us. I have I have a little couple of questions. Which are the requirements for Latin American projects to produce with the NFB?
Yeah, good question. So as I told at the very beginning, we're always on the lookout for international co-production. There's no specific requirement, I mean like written requirements, because the NFB is really a producer, a national producer, and not a funder. But when we go in as a producer, because we're government funded, we have a yearly allocation that is coming at the studio and allows us to not only decide to produce, but have the means to produce over a number of years, depending on the scale of the project. So what we're looking for when going into a co-production is usually the partner itself. So it's, as I said, because those are adventure, what we're looking for mainly is to have a resonance with the partner we associate with. I'm going to give you the example of 𝐄𝐬𝐭𝐞 I just told you about. It's a co-production between a Berlin group and creators from Canada. And the way we went at it is really through our presence, like in this kind of events in Germany as early as 2015, we were meeting people, discussing about interaction, exploring their work, understanding how they create, what are their process, what are their values, and really met them. I think we met them 5 times. 5 times in different settings before engaging in co-production with them. And this is usually how we engage in a co-production on the international level, is really first building a human relationship, both with the producers and the creators. One thing that is key when we co-produce is usually in international co-production, we go into 50-50 kind of thinking, not all the time, but most of the time, because 50-50 gives you a real collaboration ground. And when you're exploring a new medium and trying to figure out how a medium will enhance the story or the experience you want to make live, then this is really much needed. We felt after early on, we got engaged in co-production where we didn't give the room for the human relations to really ground themselves. And this was very difficult, and it ended up in a lesser project. And we feel that it ends up in a lesser project than when you go and you take your time and really find the synchronization, the human synchronization about vision, about way to work, about aspiration and values. This is really how we work. So this is once we're going into there, this space and time allows us to validate the level of expertise of each participant, the complementarity of the expertise playing together, and also is much needed, I feel, to establish, as I pointed out that many times, what is going to be the story. Like, are we synchronized in the story? We did a co-production with Argentina a number of years ago. I think it was 6 years ago. The project was called Primal. And this is how it happened. Like, we had previous relationship with the people at Encuentro in Buenos Aires. Like, I think there was 3 meetings before. There was a workshop organized in Buenos Aires, then another workshop in Montreal, and it ended up with a subject about Scream. So we were trying to find what is common to Canadian culture and Argentinian culture amongst the youth, and it was the relation to screaming. So it ended up in a web project where we were inviting people to scream in front of their screen as hard as they could. And the project was called Primal. It was aimed at a specific public. It was a youth public because of Encuentro. So this is really how co-production happened with the interactive studios at the National Film Board.
But is it mandatory to have a partner, Canadian partner?
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
you can co-produce directly with the NFB?
Oh no, you can co-produce directly with the NFB. There's either way. Like, because we have the yearly funding, we're able to co-produce. Like, for instance, with the Chomsky versus Chomsky project, we're the co-producer, and the Schnelle Bunte Bilder is the other co-producer, and they're in relation direct to us. Sometimes there is a third party element where we're going to come in, and there's an independent producer from whatever the country and an independent Canadian producer. It allows us to go for more money in Canada, which is CMF, Canadian Media Fund, and build a bigger structure. But this is pretty much the 2 ways to co-produce with the NFB. Or sometimes, but really, really not often, money coming from a foundation or comes into a structure, and then it funnels through one or the other producer.
And do you have an open call for these?
No, we don't use open calls formula. Sometimes what we do is an open call for ideas. So we call upon ideas, but really first level ideas, just like a 1-page or 2-page draft of what the intention would be. Again, it's a way after to take a step back and create that human experience I was telling you about. So we've done at the beginning of studio a couple project call, but it really never turned out that well because the human relation doesn't have time to really sync together. While if we start at the level of an idea, well, the creators and the co-producers are really able to fascinate the project and really input from their different perspective from earlier on into a project. And for us, this is after 12 years, like I said, it's really the right formula. We feel it's like everybody has to I think there's someone who, how do you manage the level of emotional commitment? And this is how we manage it, is that we make sure that we're emotionally really solid and vision-wise really synchronized before like bringing in all the other resources and really shaping a project, budgeting it and moving it forward. This is a big advantage we have at the NFB. Sometimes when we engage at the idea level or at the relationship level, we're able to bring seeding money, I like to call it, but a couple, well, a little more than a couple of dollars, but like low risk input into a project to just see if we have like a strong project, and maybe sometimes depending on the skills of the people around the table, even have like early prototypes of what the project could become. And we use different type of methodology like paper prototyping that I like very much, where you act, it's really low tech, but with the low tech approach, you can validate the high tech approach if you want to go that way. So this is really how we. I think we feel that if you allow yourself to take that time and to spend that little money at the very beginning of it, you're like making ways for way better relationship and creation. And the Chomsky project really taught us that, and the Enemy project also. I met Karim in 2014, and we released the project 4 years after. So it's often a luxury, I would call it, we have at the National Film Board, being financed like we are, to really work on the very structure of the human relationship into the production, and not going too fast into the production. Yeah, that's basically how we work. I'm just going to see that.
Thank you, Louis. Milena Castro says, how do you manage the level of emotional commitment that the user delivers in immersive experiences that have such dense or dramatic layers? Are you work based on the duration of the experience, the type of form of the information provided, or what other ways?
Okay. Okay, how do we manage the emotional commitment? Well, I talked a little of how we design it at the beginning. Is really when we start designing the core of an experience, at some point we take a step back and okay, so they're going to go to that emotional scenario in a way. And usually we design those emotional scenarios. So we really ask the creators, say, in what emotional stage am I going in after 30 seconds, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and so on. And I haven't got a clear example at hand, But just imagine a scenario curve, but it's an emotional curve that we design, and we use it as a creative tool to manage those kinds of emotion. I'm not a very like, if you've done a number of VR experience, especially where you're really immersed, sometimes you're exposed to very violent situation or very dramatic situation, and I often feel that the creators wanted to shock you in a way, but we feel it's a great responsibility for you as a creator, for us as producer, to take that decision. So if we decide to go, the unknown photograph was really, we ask ourselves a lot of those questions, and for Enemy also. I'm going to give an example of The Enemy, where there was an emotional scenario written by 𝐄𝐬𝐭𝐞 and his team, because at the beginning you had to answer a small questionnaire, because it was intended to be shown in different places in the world. So depending where you're from, you may have a different effect to a specific conflict. And so if, let's say, you, like, I'm going to use a real example. The person who translated from Hebraic to English was a girl from Paris, and she never was able to go towards the Palestinian soldier. So when we saw that very early in the testing of the prototype, we said, okay, so there needs to be a questionnaire where we're able to situate emotion-wise where people are coming from, and make assumptions. If you come from a specific region, one of the 3 specific regions, you will never be presented the first conflict. As a first conflict, sorry, the conflict you're closest to. And this is ways we find of managing the emotional commitment we're asking. So be very caring for the visitors, and you will, I don't think perfection is something we can reach, because there's too many emotional differences among ourselves, and you never know where someone comes from or in what emotional stage they will come in the day they will go into your experience. But at least we're trying to aim for that respect of designing an experience where we just don't teleport you in a place that can be very brutal for someone, depending on each. So we really design it in the experience. This is how we do. And on the duration part of the question, we never know at the beginning. We never aim for a duration. We aim from the very core of the experience, more connected to the emotional we want to create into the immersive space. And often what we found after a number of experience is that if the emotional and the narrative and the experience is well accomplished, is well directed, people lose time at the very beginning, and we do that all the time. We ask people at the end of the experience, how long do you think were you in? And has never happened almost, unless you're with makers with great knowledge of how those experiences are created. But people lose track of time. So for instance, Enemy was a 50-minute experience. And most of the people, they would say, well, I don't know, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. The unknown photograph was something like 10-minute experience. And people had felt they have been in the experience for way longer. So it was like, oh, strange effect. And I think this is all happening in the emotional and perceptual level from the visitor's point of view. People just lose track of time. One of the first project I showed you, Way to Go project where you would walk into a forest. There was two versions of it. There was the web interface, and there was like in goggles experience of it. In the in goggles, we would have people staying there for 45 minutes, just because it was the way the project was created. It was looping, and people just felt good staying there. And it was the spirit, the emotional ground of the project was really about taking a pause. So it's really how we design. We designed the emotional scenario, and then duration. We end up with duration at some point, or we may have as producer and creators at some point to say, okay, cool. As in the last example of Way to Go, it's like you have moved through the experience after I think it was 8 or 9 minutes, but then it loops in a way. So if you want to stay there, but actually what you've created is an 8-minute experience. It was just designed in a pause matter, or in a like a contemplative matter. Contemplation was one of the key state of mind with the creators designed with, and then the technology follows. And how do you create a space that is elastic in time? So this is more how we work most of the project. The Chomsky project is built in the same kind of way. You can stay in conversation for a number of hours, but because of funding people and more like production consideration, then you have to put X number of people per hour and so on and so on. But this is really a couple of example of how we manage emotional commitment, and we make sure we respect the visitors. I think, yeah. Whoops, your mic is.
Great, thank you. Now let's go for the last question. 𝐄𝐚𝐭𝐤𝐿 says, whoa, this is a wonderful presentation. Has the NFB done any participatory works with local stakeholders groups from marginalized communities?
The NFB as a group, yes, it's a signature of many of the NFB's production, and it dates back to early stage. If you're familiar with the Fogo Island process, it's a film that dates back to the 50s. There's a number of written pieces on that, and the interactive studio really are inspired by many of those work where you work with the stakeholders as co-creators, and we have different methodology to create that. I can give you an example. We're moving into a project right now about the unknown history of hip-hop music in Quebec in early 1980s, where when you look at the story of the hip-hop movement in Quebec, in French-speaking Canada, it's like there's 10 years of storytelling missing, because those stories are those of marginalized communities, early migrants to Quebec in the early 1980s. And now we designed a project to make sure that we have people on the executive production committee, where we created a steering committee where we have stakeholders of that era that are now 40 years older, sitting with me at the table, looking at the project we want to create, and really making sure that we take into consideration their perspective into the making of the project. We also use approaches where we use, I call it shadow projects, where you have like the main projects, and almost all of the key creators have an intern working with them from those communities. Some of them still marginalized, that can work and learn and contribute to the project creative-wise at different level. So this is one like example that's going on right now, but there's a number of those example. And this is an interesting question because it's really something we do more and more, just because of the right to tell the story. So the document I was telling you about at the very beginning, there's a question now that we've implemented in that questionnaire maybe 5 years ago. It was, who are you to tell that story? How is that story belonging to you to tell it? So it's really working with the First Nation people in Canada, but other marginalized community within Canada, within Quebec, within different cities, that we really are moving like forward and more with those, I would call them co-creation process, where the marginalized communities are part of the creation, or at least some of their representative, if not the community as a whole.
Thank you. And for ending, I would like to ask you if you can recommend some markets and festivals for this kind of project.
Yes, of course. Well, the obvious one, well, there's a like near you that I don't know if there's anyone from Metamorphosis, but I've been in the south, well, in Chile a number of years ago now. So Metamorphosis is an event. I think it's going to be held in June 2022. I'm speaking with some people from Connecta and them, but Metamorphosis, if you look at that in like close to you, it's happening in Santiago in June 22. I may come down, I hope. Let's see. On the international level, there's a, I won't recall the name of it, but in Manizales in Colombia, there's a great moving image festival there, where they really look into those new narrative format. So that's I've never been, but I've worked with a group in Montreal that have like really close connection to them, and they've invited a couple of creators originally from Colombia that we work with now as Canadians. In the usual suspect in the interactive world is really International Documentary Festival in Amsterdam, especially the Duck Lab space. It's in Amsterdam every November. It just ended. We had like the project Serotonin Anonyme or Brainstream that I talked about at the beginning was launched there as an international first. They really bring people from all over the world. So this is pretty unique, I feel, because they're kind of central in a way. I don't like to say that, but anyway, they are in a way. People from Africa, Asia, North America, South America, they all converge to Amsterdam in a way, and they do a great work, and they've been pioneers in those type of work as early as 2010, I think was their first edition at IDFA, maybe even earlier than that. And it's really the Duck Lab, IDFA Duck Lab festival. If you go on their website and you see all the different projects, this will give you a panorama, a pretty exceptional panorama of what's being produced in the interactive field nowadays. The two others that I'm familiar with is Sundance in Utah, so Park City, and they've done. Chomsky was not only they have the festival, they have Sundance New Frontier, which is the new interactive field. They also have international call, and they bring people from all around the world at the New Frontier Lab. Enemy was at the New Frontier Lab. 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐭𝐢𝐜𝐤 also was at the New, and it's a 5 days workshop, written workshop for interactive formats. So this is really also one of the key festival. And the last one I'm very familiar with is Tribeca Festival in New York. April, I think. They're in April. I'm less familiar with well, they're the Japan Prize. If you look at the interactive Japan Prize, you have like another perspective also from Asia. But yeah, if you look at those 5 events, I think you have like a playground to get familiar with interactive work.
Okay, thank you, Louis, for your time. Thank you for your generous presentation. I think we are all amazed with this speaking, with all these alternatives and all these examples of projects. I think the people is very anxious for working with the NFB. So we hope this is going to be the beginning of a collaboration relationship.
Same on my side.
Thank you, thank you. We hope to have you again in Conecta and in another kind of collaboration ways.
Yeah, in person.
In person, yes, hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully, if the COVID allows it.
Yeah, that's what we're all wishing for, but we'll see.
Yes, we'll see. So Louis, goodbye and have a great week.
Yeah, you too, and thank you so much for your attention.
Great.